welcome everybody. Should we just introduce ourselves? Do you want to go first, Paul?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. So, hi everybody. My name's Paul, CEO of the employment charity and social enterprise Aspire Oxfordshire, and I wear a number of hats. So I'm also one of the directors of the Oxfordshire Social Entrepreneurship Partnership, OSEP Community Interest Company. So yeah, I'll be sharing some of my experience and insight from those positions today.
Great, Dominic. I can't believe you need an introduction, but there we go.
Of course I do. Dominic Hare, I'm Chief Executive at Blenheim Palace, visitor attraction, property business, land care. Probably more than most businesses, we're very physically attached to one space and one set of communities, and kind of know we will be in 100 years' time as well.
Great, thanks. And my name's Grant Hayward. I wear a few hats as well, and for the sake of this, I support OSEP, which we're going to learn about in a second. Which in turn supports, well, I won't give it away. Let's get on to the presentation. So, and just to share with you, what we're going to do is there are a few slides to set the scene, to explain what OSEP is, to set the scene for the topic, and then we'll bring it out into a discussion. And really keen, I'll just sort of chair something, and we'll be probing Paul and Dom to get some real examples of this topic. So, what we're going to be talking about today is spending for good. Your buying power can make a positive impact. So you know who we are. We thought we'd first of all tell you a little bit about OSEP. So OSEP actually was an idea that came out of the universities a good number of years ago, and it started as a relatively informal partnership, I suppose, between both universities. They were keen to push out into the wider community the fantastic support we all know they provide to social enterprise. And because they were looking to connect with the community, that's where I got involved, and I've been supporting it ever since. But really excitingly, about a year ago, just over a year ago, in fairness to the universities, it was always the aspiration that it would set up to be of the community for the community. So the company was set up as a community interest company. It is a social enterprise. It's been set up on a really light model, so it doesn't have any overheads, it doesn't employ anybody, it doesn't pay any rent. It has a board of, and I will say this, it has a board of fantastic volunteer directors, including Paul, and it's there specifically to support social enterprise, enterprising charities, social entrepreneurs, and purposeful businesses, which is quite exciting. So yeah, last year it set up as a community interest company, and shortly afterwards it bid for a contract to develop, to deliver support for that we'll talk about in a second. And I have to say at this point, Blenheim were really instrumental for us being able to win that. They supported us with a loan to make sure we had the right cash flow in place to be able to take on that contract. So I think importantly, OSEP is there really, at the moment, it's focused very much on providing this business support program for that cohort I mentioned earlier. But it is there also in the longer term to develop the sorts of things that we're talking about now, to really be a platform and a way in which we can raise awareness of and promote themes and agendas that we think are going to bring a lot more social and environmental impact to Oxfordshire. And I'll get Paul perhaps to jump in and add things that I might have missed. So that's OSEP. We're about to launch a new website, which we're all quite excited about, so you can find out more about us there, and you'll hear more about that in due course. But this program I mentioned, the business support program, the LEP had tremendous foresight a number of years ago and went for some money to specifically support social enterprise, enterprising charities, and these purposeful businesses. So through this program, we're delivering a range of support. There are grants, there's one-to-one support. We have a range of Escalate hubs around the county. We also have a leadership development program, and we've been, well, like most people, but we have been quite agile, and we're delivering most of this online now, including a peer-to-peer support program, which focuses down on either themes or types of business or stage of business. And we also connect to the Access to Finance program. And as I say, this is a European-funded LEP program, so we're proud to be delivering that. So back to the topic, spending for good. I thought I'd just give a couple of slides to set the scene. Why would you want to do this? Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons, and we can talk about this in the discussion in a tick. But generally speaking, businesses can win more businesses through the Social Value Act. We won't get bogged down too much in this, but a number of years ago, law was passed to obligate anyone spending money, public money, to consider what social value is added through those contracts. And that's encouraged, particularly the larger providers of public services or contracted to public services, to really find creative ways that we'll talk about in a tick. So you might not be delivering services to the public sector yourself, but you may be supplying people that are. So that's something to bear in mind right the way down the supply chain. Generally speaking, it's a way to, I mean, we've heard a lot about it over the last couple of days, haven't we? But so many more businesses want to embed or become more purposeful and embed that in their businesses. And this is one way of doing that. You might want to make more positive social environmental impact locally. You might want to connect with local communities, and clearly businesses want to be attracting more business, the right sorts of people to work for them, investment, and also perhaps develop partnerships. So there are a few reasons why. In terms of how you can do it, again, we'll talk about this, but Social Enterprise UK has a campaign. We're avid supporters and work closely with them. They have a Buy Social campaign encouraging businesses to use social enterprises more. And here are a few that have signed up to their Buy Social Corporate Challenge. There's also a great website, Paul knows more about this than I do, to be honest with you, but a great website called Supply Chain, and we'll be talking about that as well. Okay, so I'll come off of that, and let's, I'll stop sharing my screen. Yeah, oh, you're still there. That's great. I thought I was talking to myself for a minute. The other thing I meant to say was our good friend and colleague, Rosie Jacobs, has just dropped in some links there. So if you're interested in that Escalate program, there's more details there. So let's kick this off then. Paul, is there anything that you wanted to add in terms of OSEP itself, first of all? Did I miss something?
No, Grant, you're very comprehensive in that. Thank you. I just want to underline how it's been great to see the coming together of some quite different organisations, but around that common purpose. So it's coming back to that purpose theme again. You know, you've got both universities, you've got some of the leading social enterprises in the county coming together with that common purpose and working together really well. It's been a very positive experience for me as one of the volunteer directors.
That's great. And the other thing I forgot to mention, I don't think I did anyway, but there is a poll we've set up. I'm sorry, it's more wordy than I thought it was going to be. So if you don't mind taking a couple of ticks, really what we're saying to you is, how do you leverage your supply chains at the moment? So those of you that are watching with us, if you could just have a little look at that, you know, you perhaps there are some people doing quite a lot of this, or others are interested in it. It'd just be interesting to get a feel of where you sit on that. So, and we'll keep an eye on the chat as well. So, Paul, I mean, in terms of being you're there, Chief Exec of a social enterprise, you've actually been sort of, I suppose, at the forefront, really, particularly with some of these organisations that are looking to find ways of dealing with social enterprise. You want to talk a little bit about your experience of that, and you know, and how you've benefited, and the sorts of things other businesses can do?
Sure. So I think we have quite a diverse range of customers for our social enterprise offer, which for those of you who don't know, it's primarily grounds care and property refurbishment and property services. But we also now offer recruitment support and some consultancy support. So different customers have come from different perspectives. So broadly speaking, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but we've had housing associations and local authorities come to us, I guess, more with the Social Value Act has been a really helpful prompt, and it's really encouraged the conversation there. They've proactively sought out social enterprise to build into their supply chain because of that push. But I wouldn't ever want to limit it to that, because it really is there's so much more to it than that. You know, the housing associations in particular see the social impact we have for a lot of their tenants in their housing, for example, and the local authorities also and the housing associations also want value for money, and they want to see a good job done. So that's been very much a driver as well. I'd also say I work with GLL Leisure. You mentioned before, Grant, that it's not just the housing associations and the local authorities. It's also where there are large suppliers of local authorities, and GLL Leisure run many of the leisure centres in this county. They in turn have appointed us for a lot of their maintenance works, and that was driven in part because they wanted a local partner that was responsive within the timeframes they needed. So again, there was a driver around social value. At GLL are also one of the largest social enterprises in the country, so there was I guess a feeling of wanting to support a fellow social enterprise, but it was about that responsiveness and local positioning. And then on towards the other end of the spectrum of our customers, we have sort of private companies. So more recently, we've been appointed as a preferred supplier for Taylor Wimpey, Bouygues, and we've undertaken some work with Blenheim and Pye Homes. And I think there's been an emphasis, understandably, on work quality and responsiveness and pricing, but also very much a genuine buy-in to wanting a local organisation that has clear social impact on the ground. So, again, all convening underneath a core purpose. So it's been very encouraging to see, particularly in the last year or so.
And interestingly, to bring those two bits together, Paul, I mean, Dominic, that whole thing about local and sort of social impact as well, and Blenheim has definitely sort of been focusing a lot on its procurement policy, isn't it, really? And those two you hold dear to your heart, don't you?
We do. I actually think we've probably done less good work on procurement than we could have done. For us, the last 3 years have been something of a learning experience, and that's why working with people like you and Paul is a blessing, because you help us accelerate up that curve. It originally started, in fact, from just a simple economic focus on trying to spend money locally. But then and we do that because we have a goal to treble our contribution to the local economy, and migrating spend closer to home is a good way of doing that. But then you start to think, well, why are we treating that as a valid objective? And that then gets you into, well, what are the benefits of spending money locally? And there are, of course, environmental benefits and other things, but you then look to see, well, what is the effect of that local money spent? And so for us, spending the money locally with Aspire is massively more impactful than simply spending it locally. We know what excellent work Aspire does and how, in fact, we can engage with them on a multilateral basis. And I think we've probably done more of that than simply trying to set up a procurement policy that says, try to spend money with social enterprises if at all possible. It's actually finding the key social enterprises and working out what kind of two-way relationship that we can have with them, and absolutely spend where we can with them, but are there other ways we can work together to deliver joint goals, or other help we can simply give? It's something that has a really high profile amongst our staff as well, so much more so than publishing a procurement policy would ever have. Our staff are hugely aware of our work with a number of social enterprises, and Grant is a well-known face around Blenheim, and Farmability and Aspire and a whole heap of others. And it's something our staff are very proud of. And I think it starts to make tangible the impact of what they do day in, day out. And, if you take our farming teams and our rural teams, for example, they don't just spend money with social enterprises. They bring them onto site. They work alongside them. They become friends. And, I think well into the lockdown, we still had some individuals coming onto site in a very safe way, because that social contact and that multifaceted relationship was so important to that individual.
Yeah, well, you beat me to a question, actually, because I was going to ask whether or not it's, okay, yes, we're interested in social enterprise, obviously, but that area is greying now, and there's a lot of businesses watching this and involved over these next few days that genuinely want to be more purposeful. And I think, as you say, I know quite a lot of your people and in lots of different ways, and I just think it's fantastic the way they gravitate towards those organisations. And it can be even local businesses, Ashley at Wonky and others that you've dealt with. They're not social enterprises, but they're very purposeful local businesses, and it seems to me that your team just naturally goes towards those sorts of businesses, I think.
You're right. It's the great thing about purposeful businesses in general, as well as social enterprises, is you get that view of what the extra impact of working with that business will be beyond a trading relationship. So what happens to the profits? What does Paul want to achieve by getting contracts for Aspire? What do you do with that profit? And that's a super accelerator, but it's feel good. I mean, which of us, given two otherwise equal things, will not choose to work with a social enterprise? Actually, I think one of the tricks is, one of the advantages of working locally is you can sort the wheat from the chaff. I don't know how much greenwashing or whatever the equivalent thing is with social enterprise, or consultants going out teaching suppliers how to look social. I'm sure there's a fair bit of it that goes on, but locally, well, you can see. If Paul wasn't delivering so much astonishing help, particularly to sort of keeping people in homes and keeping people in jobs, related things, of course. If he stopped doing that, we would know.
Yeah.
Whatever he said on the website.
Yeah. And so here's one for you, Paul. Mike's asked a question, which I think is a good one, and I wouldn't mind chipping into at the end. But Mike Jennings is saying, is OSEP challenging local authorities to buy local? In the past, this has been an ongoing issue. You want to talk a little bit about our sort of work strategically with local authorities and the LEP as well?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'd say our biggest customer for our maintenance is the county council. So it's straight off the bat by a margin as well. So I think it does vary across local authorities as how they respond. Well, I think there's two aspects to this equation. One is that those organisations in that privileged space of being able to have a choice of procurement, they need to see more diversity and capacity in the social enterprise sector to facilitate that procurement. It needs to, and the process needs to get easier as well. So I think there does need to be more support to social enterprises around how to be procurement ready and how to respond to tenders. But that could be through relationships with organisations who need to procure. There's a lot of skill sharing and expertise that the larger procuring organisations within their procurement teams, including the local authorities, it'd be great to see some of that push down of skills and expertise down into organisations who want to offer their services and products, but aren't quite sure how to go about that process and jump through all those sort of regulatory and compliance hoops that sometimes come attached with it. And also having the opportunity to split down more into lots. And I think that's what we've seen has improved, but needs to improve further from the sort of local authority and housing association side, is that make sure that the opportunities are accessible by not being too big. Look at something that the Ministry of Justice, for example, puts out a procurement opportunity that's for the whole of the southwest of England. There's no way a social enterprise really is going to be able to respond to that kind of size. So that's one of the aspects, I think. A more encouraging shift recently has been around, I guess it links understandably to the inclusive economy agenda, where you have the City Council and others are looking at having some form of task force to progress with social value and seeing it much more embedded within their procurement departments. And that's something we have been encouraging for OSEP, but we do need to see more progress on.
Yeah, and just to complement that, really, I mean, I had a conversation last week with Richard Byard at the LEP. We're having conversations with them and the City Council. The like of Matt and Dan and the economic development team. I had a conference call with the buying team and head of finance. They want to find ways of doing it, but having been involved in this space for a long time, as you quite rightly say, Paul, there needs to be a shift both ways. I mean, I remember sitting with Bob Price a good number of years ago, and the City Council was keen then to do it, but there's a whole culture that needs to change. In the City Council, it's all very well having a policy, but if you've got somebody in procurement that's measured in a certain way that conflicts with doing that. So I think there's a lot. We've made a lot of progress, a lot to be done. But in answer to your question, Mike, we are having those, and that's exactly what OSEP sees itself there for, to really help people to do this. I think people want to do it. It's just sometimes not straightforward, really. I
just think it also goes back to Dom's point about relationships. I think once organisations and individuals in decision-making positions get to know each other a bit better and maybe go through some sort of shared journey, which isn't necessarily a procurement one, then they're much more likely to be able to move on to overcoming those barriers around procurement.
Yeah. And Dominic, do you think part of, I mean, I suppose as a buying organisation, do you think perhaps part of the challenge is not really knowing what you can do and where you can get those things from? Do you think that there needs to be something to sort of make it more obvious what you can buy, how, where you can buy it from, and what impact you're going to have by doing that?
Oh, I think that's a big problem. I mean, I'm relatively blessed that Blenheim is quite visible. So, some of these opportunities tend to come our way naturally. But there are whole heaps of our business where today there is no possible way of using our buying power to help other social enterprises and deliver greater social impact. I mean, if you take house building is a huge part of what we do. At the moment, if I want to buy walls, roofs, windows and that there aren't any sort of social outlets for that. Ditto Christmas at Blenheim. I mean, it's a huge thing, but the kind of lit art we bring in does not come locally or through social enterprise at all. And our response to that is we at least we have the longevity in the game to start to work towards it, to start to seed those kind of skills locally, give a guaranteed outlet, a kind of almost like a first customer preference to someone who wants to start in those spaces with social purpose. And that kind of challenge gives us great pleasure. But it is difficult to find. I don't think there's enough visibility there's a lot more visibility, interestingly, for businesses who commit to buy from social enterprises than there is of, if I want to buy bricks or chocolate or whatever, can I buy a social enterprise? As an aside, Tony's chocolate, buy it from the supermarkets, except the caramel sea salt flavor, which you have to leave for me.
Is that Tony Chocolonely? Is that the Dutch chocolate? Tony.
I don't know.
I think we saw him at Meaning a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. We saw him at the Meaning conference in Brighton. Yeah, fantastic. Actually, there's a video online if anyone's watching and they want to go to the Meaning conference and look up Tony Chocolonely. He does a fantastic turn on stage. It's a good chocolate and a great story. Took on the cocoa world, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, it's through all the big supermarkets. The reason I'm gaining weight is my passionate support for social enterprise.
Brilliant. I suppose we were out of time, really, aren't we? Is there anything else? Anyone else?
Yeah, I just quickly say, I mean, my pitch to people on this is who doesn't want to believe that through their work or their business, they achieve greater impact. And some of us are lucky to be in spaces where that comes more easily. But simple buying choices mean that everyone can say, I don't just achieve this, I don't just support my own staff, but through the power of my spend, we also achieve other outcomes like keeping people in their homes or getting people back into work. That's just, who would not want to do that if you really think about it? I
suppose the only thing Paul, perhaps you can have the last word, but the thing I'll chip in before is going back to your point before, Dom, about the amount of people that you buy from that commit to do it. I mean, I'm working with quite a large organisation, very large organisation at the moment locally, who are starting to look at this closely. And one of the things I'm working with is getting them to ask the right questions of their supply chain. So although you might not be able to buy from a social enterprise, if you're asking your suppliers what their policy is or whether they've thought about it, that's a big first step as well. So that would be my encouragement of those of you that buy stuff, even if you can't buy from a social enterprise yourself, ask your suppliers what they're doing. So Paul, go on, put you on the spot now. Words of wisdom, finish off and inspire our audience to go off and do something.
Well, I think just to reiterate, if you procure through social enterprises, and as we build and help grow more social enterprises, including through the Escalate program from OSEP, enterprises in turn, they employ locally, pay the living wage or higher, and you can see visibly what they do on the ground in this county. So as Dom says, I can't say what is more attractive than that, but let's all work towards that over the next few years.